Welcome all. Property Avenue WA. Can you believe it? 1st of December 2020. This is episode 33. He's Oscar and we just love chatting about things property. We like to think it's informative, it's relaxed. We encourage you to ask questions, but there's lots and lots of things happening. The focus is about WA. It's not about other parts. It's deliberately, we've done it because we feel we've got something to offer with regard to WA property. We're not suggesting we know it all, but we will try to discover the answers of your questions that you may have. And look, if you're entertaining going to buy property, or you're selling property, or you're transferring to family members, or whatever it may be, it's an opportunity to ask questions. And if we're not going to chase you down and try and sell you anything. It's purely a couple of grey-haired fellas that just are passionate about property. And we like to think that our background and our knowledge and our expertise allows us to answer most questions. And we have an opinion, of course, but it's an independent opinion. We're not paid by anybody. We are very, very much independent. And so that's what we're about. This is episode 33, which is pretty special. We'll have to work ourselves out when episode 50 comes out. We'll have to do something special to celebrate that milestone, I reckon. But to keep that. So that's what we're about. We've got some really interesting topics this week. Well, I've got a question asked about what's median house price. So we'll get Oscar to answer that, because I think a lot of people get. One of the other things that I found very interesting, an article I came across during the week, 1.1 million people are planning to sell their properties, not in WA, but in Australia, over the next 12 months. And that's the assessment. Interesting statistics. I'll give you those shortly. I also make reference about contracts. It's a busy time. Everyone's going crazy. Everyone's trying to rush to get their contracts so they don't miss out, etc. But be assured, it's really, really important that you get your contract right. So we might just touch on that. The other thing being is stamp duty in New South Wales. There's been a reform with stamp duty in New South Wales. What about WA? Are we considering that? What are the options perhaps when it comes to stamp duty? I've got my own thoughts about that. And there's also another good article that I read during the week, top 10 school catchments for house prices in Australia. And would you believe WA hits the jackpot there? It's not about performance of the school, but we'll go through the topics that we're going to discuss today. I've got a little rant, just a small one. And, of course, we've got a great if question. I haven't even told Oscar what the if question is, but I'll give it it's a little, it's not property related, but it's fun. OD, good to see you. How was your week? Have you had fun?
Excellent, mate. I've had a really, really good week, and it's early. It's Tuesday. Yep, it's Tuesday night.
Every Tuesday.
But I wasn't around last week, as you know. So I've really been missing you, mate. I've been feeling that I've been missing TV. Hey, but you know what? One thing that I haven't spoken to you about, and just in terms of what episode number did you say that this is?
33.
33. So that's well past 6 months. It's pretty much the best part of this year. And just with everything that I know about marketing, and you hear branding and message, the branding message and whether things stick in your mind, I kid you not, last week, must have been on Wednesday morning or Thursday, I can't remember, but after the show, even though I wasn't on it, I was in the car, and your little jingle that you've got on at the start of the show, and it goes something like this. And I can't do it because I'm doing this live. But me and the kids, I started whistling that, and the kids joined in. Now, the kids don't listen to this show, they don't watch the show, but they know the little Property Avenue WA jingle, and if they know it, it must be catching on, mate. So, we don't want to lose that in a hurry, but it's a great little jingle you got there, mate.
Thank you.
Other than that, a very, very busy week in WA real estate. And I sound like a broken record but it just is. It's just the case that every single week it's consistent. And now it's starting to get, if it can, it's actually starting to get consistently stronger. And testament to we've had over 1,000 sales in Perth just in the last 7 days. Over 1,000 sales, almost 1,050 actually.
In 7 days?
in 7 days. And it's not all land. In fact, I think only 85 of those sales are actually land. So there's the whole philosophy about, hang on, is it all land because of the building stimulus and the extension and all that? There is a little bit of land in there, but most of that, I think it was 780 odd of that 1,042 sales is of houses. So it's a super, super busy real estate market. That's just the sales side. There's not enough supply. There's high demand in both the sales side and the rental side. And WA is just, it's a different world over here compared to what's happening in the eastern states. It's been a long time coming. It's been a good 4 or 5 years, and the WA Indians have just been waiting that we can have our property run, our cycle. And there's no doubt that we're in that now. And 2021 is shaping up to be a very big year for people that are holding properties. So long as the big C word, and by that I'm referring to COVID, does not come along and rear its head and make a mess of our economy. And you know what? Just on one thing, I just mentioned the big C word, and I'm not being rude in any shape or form because I mentioned COVID. There's another very, very big C word that's going on at the moment, and we're watching it unfold daily. And it's to do with WA and WA's economy. And that C word that I'm referring to is China. There's a lot of action happening in terms of the trade, our trade relations with China, and that absolutely impacts on our local economy over here. Not just on the mining sector. There's the cattle sector. There's wheat and barley. There's the fishing industry. There's now the wine industry. That situation that we've got with China it's very, very critical at the moment, and that will play a part in our economy over next year, and therefore it'll play a part in our real estate market as well. But that one's a real big unknown. We don't know what effect that's going to have, but with right now the way that it is, it's not going to be positive.
Hey, Johnny Harvey said, "Evening, gentlemen." I like the fact that he respects us and called us gentlemen. So
another grey-haired gentleman.
Yeah, he's enjoying retirement down in Mandurah Way. So we'll have to. It is my intention to catch up with him and see how he's travelling and get him to. He likes a New Zealand black beer. I'll have to tell you about that another day. But anyway, so good to see you, Harves. If anybody else got any questions, by all means, ask us. Hey, listen, talking about those points that you were raising with regard to the market, what I have found interesting this week alone is you've spoken over a few weeks about the investors. Are they coming back into the market? Very, very interesting. There was that I've observed properties that clients asked me to sound out from the East Coast, and how quickly they go. They have dropped the time frame. Mr. Harvey said he used the word gentleman loosely, the term loosely. But how quickly the properties, as quickly as they're going on the market, how quickly they are moving. So it's a bit of a sign, isn't it?
TB, it was only a few weeks ago, and we could go back and work out which episode it was, but it was only a few weeks ago and maximum a month ago that we spoke about the investor market pretty much being dead. And there was a stat that I gave you from talking to one of Perth's top real estate agents, and that was the investors that were fleeing the market. So for every 10 properties that this particular sales rep sold, 5 of them were investors that were selling their properties, and of those 10 properties that had sold, only one buyer that came along was actually an investor. And that largely has contributed to the short supply of rental properties that we've got. And that was only a couple of months ago. Now, you've just mentioned in terms of your own personal level of inquiry as to the investors seem to be creeping back into the market. On 2 occasions today, one, I had a meeting today with a real estate office owner, and he's part of a national franchise, and he's the business owner, and he categorically said investors are back in the market right now because cheap money, cheap prices, amazing rental market. Every single box to be ticked is lined up for a very, very good investor market. So they're there right now, and they're seeing that in terms of the buyers that are out there. I also had a conversation on the phone with the managing director of one of Australia's largest independent property valuation firms today. And he said, no question at all, the investors are back. They're dealing with lots of finance deals where they know that the buyers are investors. They're dealing with lots of buyer agents that typically act on behalf of investors. So it's moving so quickly. There's no situation of, is it the case that investors might come back to the market? It's absolutely happening right now. And that's only going to add fuel to the fire of what is a very, very hot seller's market at the moment.
Yep. Yep. And when I just wrote a little note about finance, that has having a huge impact. I know we were going to talk about contracts shortly and timeframes, but finance is becoming a real, as much as some people are suggesting otherwise, the finance timeframes is still having an impact on settlement timeframes. And if you are buying a property at the moment, I'm jumping the gun with our schedule at the moment, but when you mention finance and what's going on with the marketplace, please do not go and put a contract together because you're worried about missing out and do it as a cash offer when it's finance, because finance is taking time at the moment. Of course, as I mentioned, we're entering the holiday period, the Christmas period, the festive season. It's always a busy time. Now we're getting a chaotic time, and as I emphasised last week, it's so as much as someone might say to you, oh no, you can get it quicker than that. You won't. You will not get it. You need to be assured that you're going to need the best part of 21, 30 working days, not just days, but working days with regard to your finance. And I've spoken to brokers, I've spoken to bankers, and I've seen it firsthand just with our settlement business, and pull your hair out when you see the time frames, because you know damn well. And it causes so much angst, Oscar, because the clients have got expectation, and then you're going back to the real estate and saying, look, you're going to have to get an extension. This ain't going to happen.
Look, I'm glad you raised that, TB, because I hear what you're saying, right? But if I jump on the other side of the fence and I'd be the devil's advocate here, the buyers that are out there at the moment, there's few properties. They've got really, really high competition amongst them, and I'd speculate that agents are basically saying, and buyers are basically going to do whatever they need to secure the property, and they'll put 14 days, they'll put 20 days, 21 days, whatever it is, and it's almost the case that let's just get the property under contract, because otherwise we're going to miss out. There's not another 3 or 4 to choose from, so we don't want to miss out. And yes, we'll cross that bridge with finance and apply for extensions as and when we need to. And so it still causes you guys the headaches, because you guys are trying to settle the transaction. It causes the brokers and obviously the banks a headache as well. But I dare say that with the buyers have got this FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. And it's a very real fear that they've got with pretty few alternatives, that they'll do whatever they need to get the property under contract. And if that means that there's going to be a bit of uncomfortable stuff 4 weeks down the track and they need to get an extension, etc., then yeah, they'll just go through jump through those hoops, and it still makes life difficult for you guys. So I'm not suggesting that that's what.
No, it's not. It's not just life difficult for a conveyancer or a lawyer or whoever's involved in the conveyancing part. What I'm getting at, is one of my favourite sayings: "Got to cater for the what if." My issue is, what if the seller says, "Sorry, I'm not giving an extension"?
Yeah.
Then you've got a problem. You've got an expensive exercise. All I'm saying, at the end of the day, it's the client's choice. But when people ask me my advice.
Yeah.
One of my favourite sayings is cater for the what if. And because if you don't get it right and the seller turns around, I've got a situation, I kid you not, this week, well, when I say my staff having a client, I get a phone call on Saturday morning because the buyers were delayed, and they were delayed for reasons, they were dealing with a finance broker over East that doesn't know the systems in WA, so it is different. So it caused some delays with the first homeowner process, etc. Look, differently was then the sellers, when it came to settlement, there was no cleaning of the property. There was a few other things, and their argument was, well, you were late for settlement, just get what you get. And I found that really that sort of stuff coming into it, I find that really disappointing, because it was an exciting opportunity for a first home buyer. That's a little bit different again, but my point being is that if we don't get these timeframes right, as much as it's a difficult market, it's a tight market, it's a busy market, it could be an expensive exercise. Even though you might get the property, all of a sudden $200-300 a day penalties can be a very expensive exercise if you go for another 20 odd days before you get finance approval, and then another 30 days minimum for settlement, because that's what the banks want. They won't go cheap quicker than that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. But I don't disagree. I'm just pointing out, I guess, that some people are just prepared to take on and go through that level of pain just because of what's going on out there in the when they're trying to buy properties at the moment. And so from their point of view, and a lot of it, if you look at the family home point of view, it's not just an investment decision, it's a lifestyle decision. It involves more than dad, it involves more than mum, it sometimes involves kids, sometimes it's grandparents as well. And we're dealing with emotion and we're dealing with people. So when they get their heart set on something, and then the real estate agent says to them, look, guys, you put in 30 days finance on there, but there's either a cash offer or someone else can get it done in 21, it's going to look more favourable to the seller if there's a shorter time frame. Sometimes they'll just do whatever they need to and deal with the problem later. So I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm saying what you're saying is a good idea. It's tough out there for buyers.
Oh yeah. Oh, without doubt. And that's what it is. But certainly, if you are buying and there is a lot of emotion involved, and there is a lot of, as I say, we don't, as you've already expressed, stock is low. But it's interesting times. Hey, further to that, do you want to give any more stats? So you're not going to worry about your stats this week?
No, I quickly do, just because we've obviously spent most of the time talking about the selling market, and quickly I just want to talk about the rental market, because that is, that's equally got its challenges, which is nothing new. Very short supply, very high demand. I was at a real estate office this morning where they're talking about 30 and 40 people coming to their home opens. Interestingly, it becomes law this Saturday, the 5th of December, that the mandatory contact tracing comes in from the state government. So real estate agents fall into a category where they've got a number of different people that will come to their home opens and their viewings for vacant rentals. And it's mandatory that they have to record the details of everyone that comes through in the event that there is a community spread of COVID. So that's another challenge that's coming up in the next 4 or 5 days from this coming Saturday. And you just think about it logistically. You've got 40, 50 groups of people that want to look through this one rental, then they bring their kids, they bring their friends and all that, and you've got 20 minutes to show this many people through, a vacant rental. So it's pretty tough.
Just rental?
Sorry? Sorry, I missed you.
Is that tracing that you're talking about? Is that only for when you're doing a rental, or is that also when you're going to a home open?
Home open as well.
Okay, so mandatory tracing when visiting for home opens or rentals.
Yeah, that's right. So any form of a real estate home open, whether it's rental or sale, from this Saturday, you have to document details of every person that comes through in the event that there's a community outbreak. There's the government Safe WA app, I think it is. But if you don't want to use that, then you can just go back to the old way of writing people's names down or using some form of an app. But either way, you've got to get the details of everyone over the age of 16 coming through your property. That aside, when we look at the rental market at the moment, we know, so the situation in Perth right now, we're under 1% in terms of our vacancy rate. There's 2,875 properties available through the whole of Perth. This time last year, there was 6,016. So there was more than double 12 months ago. And 12 months ago, we started to get a bit on the thin side. So that's the first stat. But if I'm wanting to go to anywhere in regional WA and I need to move there for work or for lifestyle or for whatever it is, this is what I've got to choose from. If I want to move to Jurien Bay, there's 9 properties in total to choose from in Jurien Bay. If I wanted to go to Dunsborough, I've got a big choice of 3 properties in Dunsborough. If I wanted to move to Margaret River, right now there are 2 properties available in Margaret River, and in fact only one of them is in Margaret River, the other one is in Gracetown. And if you don't believe me, jump on realestate.com and have a look. Busselton, if I wanted to move to Busselton, there's a grand total of 17 properties available in Busselton. And Geraldton, if I wanted to move to Geraldton, for the whole population of Geraldton, which is heading towards 40,000 people, right now there's 67 properties available in Geraldton through the whole of Geraldton. So it's not just Perth that is experiencing these rental market conditions. It's the whole state. I haven't even gone through Exmouth. I haven't gone through the northwest in Karratha and in Headland, but it's exactly the same. It is absolutely a rental crisis out there, and there's just not enough supply.
Hey, here's a suggestion. What say we do, we've got the Mythbuster section, we've got the rant every week. What say we do around the grounds? I reckon we should go and try and get in contact with a real estate agent in the different areas, and even if we get them for 5 minutes, say hello, see what they're doing, and give us a bit of a brief of what they're experiencing in their various. What do you reckon?
May as well hear it straight from the horse's mouth. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, I've already contacted a couple, but I reckon we might do that around the ground.
Just in the last 30 seconds since you've come up with the idea, you've already contacted people.
Yep, I just like that.
Wow, you're amazing.
Yeah, I've got another idea, but I'll tell you about that later.
You've probably already done it. You've had this idea and you've already started doing it.
Yeah, I know. I don't sleep at night. Hey, that is just intriguing. But when you say Geraldton 67, that's gone up, because when I did the stats last week, unless you gave me false statistics, it was only 62. So they've gone up. They've got 5 extra houses available or properties available. But
yes, it has gone up. It has gone up, mate, but you put it in context. But, has that really increased the supply all that much? Bearing in mind that in the time that I was in Geraldton, at one point in time, we had 420 properties available for all of Geraldton. So 67, 62, it's a very, very tight market. Just ask any renter.
Yep. A question. Another question. So what are happening with people when they are signing up a new lease? Are they then trying to go, well, I need to ensure that I've got this property? Are they signing up for long term, like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 18 months? What's the story? What's your observation being the dedicated property management?
That's a really good question. Right now, it's less about the lease term, and right now it's all about how much they're going to pay. So just like in the sales market where you have people that are offering more than what the asking price is, that's happening on almost every rental at the moment because there's such high competition. After you move past the weekly rental amount, sometimes the lease term can influence the strengthening of your application. I mean, these days, most of the time you're looking at a minimum lease of around 12 months. Sometimes you might be somewhere between 12 and 24 months. But right now, because the rental market is so strong, there's not really too much benefit to the landlord in having an extended lease term. So it's, because if the property becomes vacant in the next 12 months, the chances of leasing it quite quickly with our current conditions prevailing is there. It's very probable. So their vacancy factor and their vacancy risk is going to be quite low. So it's not that necessary to go for a 2-year lease or even a 3-year lease. But right now, just about every single property, if you put a property on for $320 a week, it's pretty likely that you'll get offers of $340, $350 a week. And you can even head further north to $400 a week. So and that's just because of the nature of there's such high competition for such few properties.
Is location still an important factor when it comes to rentals? Are we finding the inner city, close to the city, being the areas that have just got minimal, and as the further out we go, the more property available? Is that the case or not?
No, no, that's not the case, and the reason being is because of the high supply of apartments that is within the city and also on the fringe city areas as well. So they have very high leasing activity, as in they're still leasing lots of properties through there, but there's such a high degree of apartments, which is the higher density development, and we don't have that out in the suburban areas anywhere near as much. So there's still great supply in the city and excuse me, on the fringe city areas. There's still a lot of supply, and certainly as you move away from the city, the supply gets less, and that's
Yeah,
all to do with high density apartment living.
because I think in September, October, and back then, it sounded like back then seems such a long time ago. But we were talking, and I think there was an article similar where it was sort of like the lowest vacancy rates in 13 or 14 years. So that obviously hasn't changed, and that doesn't change in a hurry, does it?
No. It's exactly the same, basically. So there's not really been any shift there at all, and I can't actually see any reason as to why that will change in the next 6 months. What I can see though is that over the next 6 months, and particularly at the end of the COVID emergency period, which finishes on the 29th of March next year, so it's around about 4 months away, I can see an absolute immediate increase in the average or the median rental price, because right now rental growth has been restricted with the existing tenants because of the moratorium on evictions and the COVID bill. But literally on the next day we can see rental increases being 30th of March, and we'll literally see a rent spike on that day.
I mean, it is predicted, isn't it? I mean, they're tipping there's going to be significant rises come over the next 12 months anyway. So that's obviously going to influence. Because, I mean, and as I made point last week, and I think we jointly have made the point, landlords, as rightly or wrongly, not everyone's going to agree with what we're saying, but landlords have been doing it pretty hard for a fair while. And okay, there's going to be some people that are going to be super greedy. But then, of course, there's also others that are covering costs. People have got debts, loans, etc., to support. And some people have been doing it fairly hard, one would say, over the last few years, particularly those that are still in the marketplace, that will still, when I say still in the marketplace, still have an investment property. So it's probably a little bit, the tenants have probably had it pretty good, although tenants might not think that at the moment. But it's probably had it pretty good for a while. And then, of course, this moratorium has had an effect on the landlords as well. So it's been one-way traffic in lots of ways. And as I say, not everyone's going to agree with that, but it has.
Yeah, it's easy when the shoe's on the other foot, though, and tenants wouldn't have to think back too far as to the absolute tenants market that they've had for the best part of the last 4 or 5 years. This year, the goalposts have shifted a bit, but there's still a lot of investment property owners that aren't selling that also have got negative equity in their properties because the real estate market has gone backwards in the time that since they bought their properties. So 3 or 4 months of a landlord's market isn't going to fix that. It's going to take a good couple of years before they can actually move back into positive equity territory. And the strong rental market that we've got at the moment will certainly assist that in them coming out of that negative equity area.
Okay, the next question being that we've got, it's been no shortage of commentary, no shortage of articles. It's supply and demand. It's predicted, and it's going to happen. If it's not already happening, rent's going to increase. We got Reserve Bank today announced there's no change to the interest rate, so it's still 0.1%. If you can afford to, why would it not be a bull market, for want of a better term? But why would you not consider the fact of saying, well, hang on, I'm going to pay this sort of rent. I'd be just as better off to try and buy a home. But you want to do
Oh, 100%, TV. The equation at the moment, and there are areas, and if you talk to any house and land package developers and builders, you even talk to a number of brokers as well. Right now, with the rising rental market that we've got and the cheap money that's available to buy a home, it actually would put you in front if you were paying the mortgage off on that home than if you were actually renting the home. And that includes when you account for rates and taxes and insurance and those costs that would normally be borne by the landlord. So right now there are some areas, not all areas and not most areas, but there are some areas that you'd actually financially be in front if you were paying the mortgage of the home as opposed to just renting the home. That said, one of the big obstacles or barriers to entry, obviously, number one is the size of the deposit that you need, but then the acquisition costs, which is largely made up of stamp duty. And you mentioned stamp duty early on in the show and the opportunity for WA stamp duty reform. And that's absolutely not on the agenda. It's a good idea, but it's not on the agenda because
You want to know my thoughts? Would you
Sorry?
like to know my thoughts? Would you like to know my thinking?
No.
Oh.
Of course I would. Of course I would.
Oh, well, I reckon, and I've said this before, but this is my thinking. I think there is an anomaly with regard to the stamp duty process here in WA. And where I think there's an anomaly, and when I say anomaly, I think it's wrong. Admittedly, I'm in that age bracket, but I'm not talking about me. But here's over 60s, okay? We want to here's an opportunity to sell, and I want to downsize and get a smaller place. I want to have a 3x2. I want to have a room for my wife and I want a room for my grandkids. My son can come and stay when he's away, comes back and he can travel overseas or whatever. Why would I not be able to, why would we not encourage that and then allow a situation where we have a reduced stamp duty or a nominal stamp duty for the over 60s who are downsizing? So if suddenly I go and buy a 6-bedroom, 5-bathroom mansion rather than my 3x2, that's a different kettle of fish. But I'm legitimately downsizing, then I think there's some consideration for that and give some. And the advantage of that then was that I would then have a little pot of money over here that I wouldn't normally have if I didn't sell my house. So it's an ideal market to sell. I've got a little pot of money over here that all of a sudden a bit of pressure off government pensions, etc. So there's a win-win, in my opinion. So that's my thing about the overseas. Along those lines, I haven't thought about it, the policy exactly, but that's the concept.
Yeah, mate, I think you've mentioned that to me before, and I think it's using your word, I think it's a fabulous idea, and for the reasons that you just said. Now, there's lots of incentives and help-me-ups for first home buyers and people that are looking to get on their feet when they're first stepping into the property market. And not just in terms of the property market, but there's other ways that you help young people get up on their feet and move into, adulthood, and get them through college and uni, and they get lots of concessions, I guess. Similarly, when you're trying to get people off their feet, as opposed to on their feet, in their declining years, you've got things like pensions, and you've got subsidies, and you've got healthcare benefits and everything for people in that latter stage of life. But one thing that is fundamentally missing is what's going on in the housing area, and it's exactly what it is that you've just mentioned. So it's a bit of a gap there that absolutely could be filled. It'll be very good for the economy, and now might be the opportune time as well, because we've just got a new state Liberal leader in the name of, what's the new guy's name who's taken over from?
Maybe you wouldn't ask me that because I was just trying to think. I do know, but I can't remember.
Is it Kirk Brett?
It's Kurt something.
Yeah. So that guy, David Kirkbride or something.
I'll make sure I'll find that out. So we respect all parties.
Yeah, but I mean, now would be a good time because he's got an election coming up in about 4 months, and if he can come out with a policy, if you can sit him down and have a coffee and say, mate, I've got this idea, that would be a feather in that guy's cap, which he definitely needs in order to take on Mark McGowan in 4 months' time. Because that election in 4 months' time, state election, is pretty much a foregone conclusion.
Can I just tell you? Sorry, we've got some amazing followers. I've had one. I'm guessing it's my Princess and also Mr. Harvey have come back with us in a quick swoop, and his name is Zach Kirkuk. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, that guy.
Zach Kirkuk. So thank you, Mr. Harvey, and thank you, my Princess. Her text comes through as Property Avenue WA, but anyway, thank you, folks. I'm glad that someone knows what's going on in the world rather than Oscar and TV.
So grab Zach's contact details. Maybe your Princess or Harves can go and get Mr. Zach's contact details in the next 20 minutes before the show finishes, and book you an appointment to sit down with Mr. Zach, and you can tell him what you just told me, because I think it's a really, really good idea, and I think it ticks every single box, mate. It makes a lot of sense.
Mr. Harvey knows because he's the member for Dawesville, and that's where Mr. Harvey's down that way now.
So, Mr. Harvey, perhaps you can get an appointment booked for sometime tomorrow, albeit that Mr. Viner is currently in Geraldton. But
yeah, came up last night and fought the traffic, but I will be back. Hey, which is another thing too. I think there's not only is there need reform in that area, but there's also perhaps reform with when we get to a family. So mum and dad, whatever, have been in business, they retire, and they're going to restructure their affairs and transfer property within each other, purely and simply to restructure their finances. Once again, stamp duty applies. And so those things are a costly exercise, and they impact on people. There are some differences with regard to superannuation, but that's perhaps a topic for another day. But it is an expensive process, and certainly I had someone ring me up during the week and went, my God, all the fees we got charged. I said, have you had a look at this statement and seen what all those fees are? Oh, stamp duty, how much was that? And I went, yep. Yeah. So take that out, and it's not quite that bad, but it's a big cost. It's been suggested that maybe Mr. Viner can do that appointment when he's in Mandurah next week for his wedding anniversary.
Well, there you go. So so maybe Mr. Harvey, who's your executive assistant, Mr. Harvey, who'd look great in a dress, by the way. Maybe he can organise that appointment for you with Zach next week.
He's in Geraldton. I'll have to catch up with him. G'day, Harves. Anyway, enough. Let's move on to my next topic. Next topic was the home builder scheme. It's been extended, which I'm sure that will be a relief to a lot of people. But this is something that we'll have to ask our Casey or someone along those lines. Casey's been a regular guest. I had a conversation with a client yesterday, and although they've got a builder that's going to take their job on and assist them with a renovation, significant renovations, so I think the limit is 150. Am I right?
No, not the limit. Like that's the minimum.
The minimum. That's what I mean. Yeah. They've got to spend. So they were then said, look, we're full. We can't do any more. You won't get your 45,000 because you won't fit into that. We can't take any more on. But they're still doing the job. So I'm a bit confused with regard to how that works. That if the builder's taking the job on and is putting the plans together to do a renovation, then why will the client not be able to take the client on to be able to apply for the 45,000 or the 25,000? It's just something that came up yesterday, and I've put that down as a question to follow up on. If anybody knows, or if there's a builder listing and they can send us a message or contact us, that'd be good.
Yeah, mate. I don't know the answer to that.
I'll follow that up for next week. I've written that down for next week, but it's an interesting.
Yeah, cool.
But it has been extended, and I'm sure that's a relief to a lot of people. Hey, the other thing that I was going to write, this is really, really interesting. So I found this article, and as you know, I go through all the papers and all the magazines and go through the internet. And sometimes
you go through the magazines, yeah.
No, not the magazines you're thinking. And I will tell you a funny story. I got this article that someone sent to me, and I said, that's really, really good. But Property Avenue WA likes to be updated and likes to be current. the article I was given, and as we always say, look behind the scoreboard. The article was some months ago, so I did have to bring it to the correspondent's attention. That thank you for the information, but it was a little. And the other little article I read, which I had to look twice, telling us that refinancing your home is about to get very much more expensive. And when I read that article, I looked at that article. It refers to now where are we? The mortgage industry and it refers to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And they apparently guarantee roughly half of the country's mortgages, except for the fact that it's not our country.
Yeah. So do you remember, and I haven't heard that term Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac for a long, long time, but
Yep.
that was obviously in the USA.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yep. But it was very interesting. But that's where you've got to be careful as to what you're reading and what you're seeing and what you don't get caught up in, and hence what we're talking about and why we encourage people to ask questions about WA, because some of the stats that you see and are put in the papers and on TV, suddenly when you look, as we keep saying, look behind the scoreboard, the focus is very much New South Wales and Victoria. However, I did mention at the intro that I saw an article about the Australian housing market and why 1.1 million people are planning to sell their home soon. And this was so what happened was they did, amid a year of pandemic and economic-driven uncertainty, homeowners quite understandably held off on listing their properties, hoping the new year may provide more ideal circumstances for sale, except for the fact that's talking about New South Wales and Victoria, right? But a firm called Digital Finance Analytics then go on to say that of those 1.1 million people that are going to sell, and this gets back to you, in terms of demographics, 298,000 or thereabouts are international owners, so foreign citizens and Australians living overseas. 309,000 are investors. 115,800, so around about 116,000 are up traders. So up traders would be what? They're people selling and going to upgrade their homes?
Yeah.
350,000 are down traders and 28,000 are first home buyers who intend to sell in the coming 6 months.
Yeah, right.
That's the story. And they covered, obviously did a huge survey. And then what is more interesting about that is that it goes on about New South Wales and Victoria. But what is very, very intriguing is that so many Australians looking to change their living arrangements in the new year, whether it's a sea change, a tree change, this potential increase in the supply of properties in the market may prove a challenge for the nation's property markets. But that again is New South Wales and Victoria, who've got large stocks. They already had large stocks before COVID.
Yeah.
But 9,000 people in New South Wales and around 14,000 Victorians were planning to move interstate in the next 12 months. And
how many, sorry? What was that number?
9,000. So there were going to be 9,000 people in New South Wales and around 14,000 Victorians are planning to move interstate in the next 12 months. They are moving, obviously, to either Queensland, South Australia, Tasmania and WA. And it then goes one step further to say, so they've done a significant survey, all right? And then goes on to say that the top two, and this is probably not surprising, but the top two places that they are considering to move to are Queensland and WA, respectively, of which 12,587 are going north to Queensland and 6,788 want to move to WA.
Yeah, right.
So how are we going with our property assessments now?
I don't know.
How are we going with our rental assessments now? We talk about a crisis. People, I would be, if you're looking at buying here in WA and you're in WA, I'd get a little rattle on because it's going to be interesting times ahead.
Yeah, mate, and just on that, something that I don't know if you're going to bring it up before, but you touched on the difference between looking at the average price
Oh,
versus
yes.
the median price. So I've said it, so I might as well now just quickly give that definition or what that actually means, whether one should
Excuse me. Can I
refer.
excuse me. You just brushed over my statistics. No accolades with regard to the homework and research I've done, and just basically ignored it all. Okay. Next question. What do
Sometimes I'm just a little bit skeptical. I can be. I mean, I think I agree with the stats that you've said, and certainly the bits that relate to WA. But sometimes I'm just a little bit of a cynic when it comes to the survey. Who's done the survey? Do we actually know that they did a survey? Have they suggested numbers that paint a picture that they wanted? Like, I don't know. It's very, very cynical of me, and it's not really, it's not normally the way that I am. But I was just listening to some of that stuff, going, "So who are these guys doing the
Yep.
survey?"
Well, I will go and do some research. I'll do some research. I'm going to find out who these people are. And I will come back to you with a more definitive answer next week. How's that?
That sounds great. Anyway, so back to what I was saying before.
Yep.
The reason why we rely on the median house price, whether it's rental or whether it's sale, but we rely on the median house price as opposed to the mean, and the mean is the average.
Yep.
The problem is if you rely on the mean or the average house price, the problem with that is that they look at the average over a certain period of time. And if there's any outliers in that sample of property transactions, that can actually affect the mean or the average of that sample size of data. For example, if they looked at a particular quarter, and let's just say the September quarter, you can look at all the different transactions in Western Australia that have happened in the September, or let's say Perth, in the September quarter, and you can look at all the transactions that have happened in the September quarter, and let's just say that, I don't know, there's 100 sales. But if there were a couple of really, really big sales in there, and by that I mean maybe there was a sale for 25 million and maybe there was another sale for 35 million, that drags the average right up. And where you'd expect an average of 450 or 500,000, because of those two outlying properties, that can drag the average right up because those two very high price sales are included in the sample size. Whereas if you look at the median, another word for median is middle. So if you looked at that exact same sample size, what it doesn't do really is have regard for the weight of the outliers. So you'd look at the 100 sales that happened over that September quarter period, and you've still got the two high-end 25 and $35 million sales at the top end. But when we're looking at, but hang on, what's the midpoint? That middle sale of sale number 50 or sale number 51 is going to be a far greater representation of the actual average that doesn't get influenced by the outliers of those really, really high pitched sales. And that works also for the very, very low value sales as well. So if we had a number of sales for $5,000 each, that would actually drag our average down. But what it doesn't do is drag the median down. So
Yep.
that's the mathematical explanation of it.
Well, I had that question asked to me and asked if I would ask that tonight, and I said I would certainly do that. Can I just mention too, Faye contacted last week and asked the question with regard to Stratas, more particularly the owners of all the units have all sold, and they wanted to know what the process was from there when it came to organising, and when does the original owners move out, and who controls what. So I've made Faye, I've followed that up, but we're going to get someone who specialised in that area to come on board as a guest. I've touched base with that. We've got a couple of options there, and we'll follow that through for you. But basically what I can say to you, Faye, is that once you all own your respective units, or your whatever, or partner, whatever the case will be in that strata, then you can have a special meeting, and that's when you form the council of owners, and that's when you make a decision what you're going to do with regard to appointing a strata manager. So that's the basics. That's the simplistic way of. And Oscar, you can expand on that. I'm sure you're exposed to that. Strataing, would you like to expand on that?
Not really. Honestly, it's Strata, and there's also just been a change, or rather a revised Strata Titles Act. I think it's called Strata Titles Amendment Act. And Strata is a very detailed area, mate. It's an absolute specialist area, and it's something that I've got some awareness to, but I by no means am anywhere near close to being an expert in that area. So I would know a great deal more actually than what you just said. But getting someone with that practices strata titled or has a strata titled practice or strata management practice will be a great idea. It's something honestly that it's a very complicated area which I've just chosen to stay away from, so that I guess I can focus on other parts of the real estate industry. But it can be complicated. Everything that you just said though sounds right to me.
But we will. We are intending to get have an episode with regard, probably sooner rather than later. So, and we're also trying to follow. We've got several good guests coming up over the coming weeks. And we've also been following up and seeing if we can get someone to give us a rundown about landlord insurance. Is that right? Landlord insurance?
Landlord protection insurance. Yeah, it's that's also a really good area for not just landlords to know about, but the general public, because it's very good value for money insurance.
So we've got really good topics coming up in the coming week. So we will keep you updated. The other thing that I wanted to quickly mention before we close up was, of course, strike a loop at the time. But another interesting article that I came across was the fact that school catchment areas, which are really important when it comes to property, and it's a factor that people, certainly when you've got children and things to consider. But the top 10 primary and secondary school catchment zones across Australia all reported house price growth of more than 25% year on year. It was a report by Domain. Okay, so that's someone that you know.
25% year on year, 25%.
This is what they're saying. And the areas, the top 10 primary school catchment zones, WA Como Primary School was number 1.
Yeah, yeah.
Dudley Park Primary School, which is down Mandurah Way, that was number 2. And then it went interstate after that. And then in the secondary school catchment zones, Armidale Senior High School was the top catchment school when it came to along with an important factor in deciding where to purchase a home. While house price growth is usually based on capital cities and suburbs, school catchment zones rather than cities and suburbs provides a new perspective into housing price trends. And that's not based on school performance. That's nothing to do with school performance. It's all to do with is not implying is this top performing school. The rankings is not a list of top performing schools based on that plan or testing, rather top growth zones for housing.
Yeah, and that top growth zones doesn't just apply to housing values and demand for buying in the area. It also applies to the rentals as well, because at the end of the day, if you're living in the area, that qualifies for you to go to schools within the certain school zone. So it applies to the rental market equally.
Yep. So I just thought it was an interesting little bit of information that I identified during the week. Hey, I think we've just about round up. We've covered some good topics tonight. We should have a guest on next week. Timeframes we've done, subject sale, we've done that. I had another question about caveats on titles, but I'll cover that next week for that person who asked that question during the week. I'll check that out. And, of course, we've already got Faye. But I've got an if question for you.
Hit me, buddy. Hit me.
If you could bring back, or if you could have one toy from your childhood, what would that toy be and why?
See, normally you prep me before the show, mate.
I know.
So I don't get time to think about this.
I know, but I was a bit one toy from your childhood that you could have, so you could have back again today. What would that toy be and why?
Yeah, right. Okay. Would have to be something to do with a car, and I think I do remember when I was a little guy, I had like a one of those plastic car things that you sit in, and it wasn't electric. You had to pedal it. It was a bit like a Fred Flintstone mobile. But I just remember a blue car that I had and myself racing around the backyard and pedaling like hell, and you'd be a brave person to try and get me out of that because I just loved being in that car. So I reckon that's what I'd that's what I'd love to bring back. I probably wouldn't fit in it now though. What about yourself, mate? What sort of toy would you bring back?
Well, when I saw this question, it really brought a little memory back to me that I remember my grandmother. She was my dad's mum, and Marnie I used to call her, and she brought back my cousin and I amazing planes, and the lights flashed, and they were big, and you put them on the ground and they went along, their motors all went, and back in that day, that was quite unique. So she'd been on this cruise around, cruising, and she was quite a character, my money, and our money, and she brought back these things. Marnie was her. That was
not money.
No, Marnie. So I was the first, and
Marnie.
No money. And so she and I were waiting for the Fremantle wharf there and port, and there she was on there waving madly, and she was only a little thing, and she was waving there, and she couldn't wait to see Kim and I, and to give us these massive great planes, and they were pretty special. They were. I think my mother kept them for a damn long time. I remember seeing them when I'd grown up a bit. So. So there you go. That's my one.
Look, mate, just in closing and closing on a really happy note. Absolutely wonderful the news of the borders opening this morning, and in particular seeing those people at the airports. The news had lots of people at airports today that hadn't been able to see each other for 6 or 7 months. See each other in the flesh or whatever. And whilst that doesn't really affect me too much with any direct family members or anything, it does mean a lot to lots of people and little kids and grandkids and husbands and wives and that sort of stuff. So that was really nice to see them being able to physically come into contact after not being allowed to for such a long period of time. So that was really gorgeous to see on.
And we've got a lot of photos that have had that restriction for a long time. So it's pretty special. Coming up to Christmas and all those things. Yeah, couldn't agree more, mate. Great comment. Hey, listen, I think we're going to call it squits.
I think so.
Been a great show. Really appreciate it. All those people are out there. Look, please send your questions. You can either send them through on our live chat, or you can send them through during the week on our I'll put a post on our Facebook page so you can find out where you can send them. We've now got an email account where you can send an email to us with questions. But have a great week. Stay safe. And for those that are coming across the border, enjoy the hospitality of WA. Enjoy your families and your friends. And we look forward to seeing you all next week, because we will be on again and we'll have some more exciting news. Take care and stay safe.